Eli Donovan floated outside the International Space Station, focused on fixing a solar panel that had taken damage from a small piece of space debris. The vastness of space stretched out before him, Earth a blue marble below. He hummed to himself as he worked, the only sound in his helmet besides his breathing and the occasional crackle of his communication line. "Eli, you need to get back inside right now," said the urgent voice of Commander Susan Park. "I've almost got this panel secured," Eli replied, tightening the last bolt. "Just 5 more minutes." That wasn't a request. Something's happening. Something big. The tone in her voice made Eli stop working immediately. He gathered his tools and pushed himself back toward the airlock. Once inside, he removed his helmet and found the entire crew gathered around the main view screen. "What's going on?" he asked, still pulling off his spacesuit. Commander Park pointed at the screen. "That showed up on our sensors 10 minutes ago. It's not one of ours." The object on the screen was unlike any satellite or spacecraft Eli had ever seen. It was smooth, almost oval in shape, with a blue-green glow surrounding it. It sat motionless about 50 miles from the space station. "Have they made contact?" Eli asked. "Not with us," Commander Park said. "But they're broadcasting some kind of signal toward Earth." Down on the ground, Laura Griffin was working the night shift at NASA's Communications Center when the signal came through. At first, she thought it was interference, but the pattern was too consistent, too deliberate. She alerted her supervisor, who called in the director, who called the president. Within an hour, the world's best codebreakers and linguists were working to decipher the message. By morning, they had a translation. "We come in peace. Prepare to be impressed." President Samantha Hayes called an emergency meeting of world leaders at the United Nations. Diplomats and military officials from every nation rushed to New York, including Admiral Peter Holloway, who had commanded the Pacific Fleet for the past 5 years. "What do we know about them?" President Hayes asked the gathered intelligence officers. "Very little, Madam President," replied CIA Director Martin Wells. "Their ship appears to use technology we don't understand. They've made no aggressive moves, but they're now stationed in Earth's orbit and have sent 3 smaller vessels toward our atmosphere. They're asking for permission to land." Admiral Holloway sat quietly, listening. Unlike the others in the room, who displayed various degrees of panic or excitement, he remained calm, analyzing the situation with the same steady nerves that had seen him through 3 wars. "Your recommendation, Admiral?" President Hayes asked, noticing his composure. "We meet them," Holloway said simply. "We show strength, not fear. We prepare our forces but keep them out of sight, and we listen very carefully to what these visitors have to say." The world held its breath as the 3 alien ships descended, landing on the large open area that had been cleared in Central Park. News networks broadcast the event live to billions of viewers. Children were sent home from schools to watch with their families. Some people celebrated in the streets while others hid in bunkers. The ships were beautiful with sleek designs that seemed to bend light around them. When they opened, the aliens that emerged looked almost human, except for their blue-tinted skin and eyes that were too large, too bright. They walked with a fluid grace, as if gravity affected them differently. Their leader approached the human delegation with arms spread wide in what appeared to be a universal gesture of peace. "I am Ambassador Zortek of the Veloxian Confederation," the alien said through a small device that translated his words. "We bring greetings from the stars." President Hayes stepped forward. "On behalf of Earth, I welcome you." Ambassador Zortek looked around at the gathered humans, his expression curious but with a hint of something else. Perhaps it was amusement or maybe pity. "We have watched your world for some time," he said. "Your species has potential. We have come to help you reach it." The condescension in his tone was subtle, but unmistakable. Behind President Hayes, Admiral Holloway narrowed his eyes slightly. The first day of meetings went smoothly on the surface. The Veloxians spoke of their confederation of planets, their advanced technology, their peaceful missions of contact with other species. They showed holographic images of their homeworld, a planet with 3 moons and sprawling cities that seemed to be made of crystalline light. "We have eliminated war," Zortek explained proudly to the assembled human leaders. We have overcome disease and hunger. We have harnessed energy sources you cannot yet imagine. Each statement was delivered with the air of a teacher explaining simple concepts to young students. Several of the human delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. During a break in the talks, Admiral Holloway found himself alone with Zortek in a hallway of the United Nations building. "Your role is military, is it not, Admiral?" the alien asked. "It is," Holloway replied. "A concept we find rather quaint," Zortek said with a slight smile. "Our security forces are ceremonial now. We have no need for weapons of war." "Different paths lead to different developments," Holloway said carefully. "Indeed," Zortek agreed, "some more advanced than others." Later that evening, at a private dinner with the President and her closest advisors, Admiral Holloway voiced his concerns. "They're treating us like children," he said, making it clear they think they're above us. "They are above us technologically," pointed out Secretary of State Karen Lewis. "Their ships can cross between stars. We're still figuring out how to get people to Mars." "Technology isn't everything," Holloway countered. "They've revealed very little about their actual capabilities, and they seem particularly interested in our military." "You think they're a threat?" President Hayes asked. "I think they're too confident," Holloway replied, "and in my experience, overconfidence is dangerous." The next day, Zortek made a proposal. "We would like to demonstrate some of our capabilities," he announced, "and perhaps you could show us something of yours. A cultural exchange of sorts." "What did you have in mind?" President Hayes asked. "Our ship in orbit is a modest vessel by our standards, but it represents the height of Veloxian engineering. We would be pleased to show it to your representatives." Zortek's large eyes blinked slowly. "And perhaps you might show us some of your achievements in return." "We would be honored," President Hayes replied diplomatically. As the meeting adjourned, Zortek approached Admiral Holloway once more. "We are particularly interested in seeing your naval vessels," he said. "Our research suggests that human warfare has primarily developed around ocean combat. Is this correct?" "Navies have played a significant role in our history," Holloway acknowledged, choosing his words carefully. "Fascinating," Zortek said. "We look forward to seeing these primitive water vessels. I'm sure they will be educational for us." "Admiral?" Holloway simply nodded, but as he watched the alien walk away, a slight smile crossed his face. The Veloxians were in for a surprise. The day of the Veloxian demonstration arrived. A select group of Earth representatives boarded a specially designed shuttle that would take them to see the alien flagship in orbit. Among them were President Hayes, Admiral Holloway, and several other military and scientific experts from around the world. As their shuttle approached the Veloxian vessel, the humans fell silent in awe. The celestial dominance hung in space like a shimmering jewel, its hull reflecting the sunlight in waves of blue and silver. It was at least 3 times the size of the International Space Station, with a design that seemed to defy human understanding of physics and engineering. "It's beautiful," whispered Dr. Grace Fuller, the head of NASA's Xenobiology Department. "Beautiful, yes," Admiral Holloway agreed quietly. "But notice the weapon ports along the sides? This isn't just a science vessel." The shuttle docked with the alien ship, and the human delegation was greeted by Zortek and several other Veloxians in what appeared to be formal attire. "Welcome aboard the Celestial Dominance," Zortek said with a slight bow. "A modest explorer, by our standards, but sufficient for first contact missions." The tour began immediately. The Veloxians guided the humans through vast chambers filled with technology that seemed almost magical. Holograms flickered everywhere, displaying information in the aliens' complex language. Plants from other worlds grew in special chambers, creating small ecosystems. In one room, a model of the entire Milky Way galaxy rotated slowly, with certain stars highlighted in different colors. "The blue markers are worlds we have visited," explained Zortek. "The green are those inhabited by sentient life. Your solar system has just been added to our database." President Hayes studied the model carefully. "How many civilizations have you contacted?" "You are the 27th, Zortek replied. Most were at similar stages of development as Earth, some slightly more advanced, many less so. The tour continued to the ship's engine room, where a pulsing core of light powered the massive vessel. Our drive system allows us to bend space-time, one of the Veloxian engineers explained. What you might call faster-than-light travel. The human scientists took notes furiously, though much of what they were seeing was beyond their current understanding. Finally, they reached what Zortek called the defense center of the ship. Here, several Veloxians monitored various screens and control panels. While we are a peaceful species, Zortek said, space can be dangerous. We maintain protective capabilities. With a gesture, he activated a large view screen that showed a simulation of the celestial dominance encountering what appeared to be an asteroid field. Beams of energy shot out from the ship, vaporizing the larger rocks instantly. Our energy weapons can be precisely calibrated, Zortek continued, from a simple deterrent to, well, something more substantial if needed. The demonstration shifted to show the ship disappearing from view entirely. Advanced cloaking technology, Zortek explained. We can move undetected when necessary. Throughout the presentation, Admiral Holloway remained silent, his face revealing nothing. But his eyes missed nothing, analyzing and assessing everything he saw. As the tour concluded, Zortek led the human delegation to what appeared to be a dining area, where strange but delicious-looking foods had been prepared. As they ate, the conversation turned to Earth's own capabilities. We have shared some of our achievements with you, Zortek said, his tone casual but his eyes fixed on Admiral Holloway. Perhaps you would return the courtesy? We are particularly interested in how humans defend themselves. President Hayes glanced at Admiral Holloway before responding. We would be happy to show you some of our technology, though I'm sure it seems primitive compared to yours. All technological paths are worthy of study, Zortek said with what seemed like practiced diplomacy. Even the less advanced ones. One of the other Veloxians, a female named Kelmari who had been introduced as their chief scientist, leaned forward. Our records show that human history is filled with conflicts between your own kind. Does this mean your defense technology is more developed than your other sciences? The question hung in the air for a moment. Admiral Holloway set down his drink slowly. We've had our share of wars, he acknowledged. It's not something we're proud of. But yes, it has led to certain priorities in our development. Fascinating, Kelmari said. Most species we encounter develop space travel before achieving significant weapon technology. Your path has been different. Zortek seemed to ponder this for a moment before speaking. Again, perhaps a demonstration is in order, a friendly comparison if you will. His large eyes blinked slowly. Would you be willing to show us your most advanced naval vessels? Our research suggests they are the pride of your military technology. Admiral Holloway exchanged a look with President Hayes, who gave a subtle nod. We would be honored, Holloway said. In fact, we're conducting naval exercises next week. The Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group will be operating in the Atlantic. You're welcome to observe. Carrier. Strike Group. Zortek repeated the words as if tasting them. These terms are unfamiliar to us. You'll see soon enough, Admiral Holloway said with a slight smile. Later, as the human delegation prepared to return to Earth, President Hayes pulled Admiral Holloway aside. Are you sure about this? She asked quietly. Showing them our military capabilities? They already know we have weapons, Holloway replied. What they don't know is how good we are at using them. Besides, they've been scanning our planet since they arrived. They've seen our ships, but they haven't seen them in action. And if they're intimidated? Or worse, if they see us as a threat? Holloway considered this for a moment. With respect, Madam President, they've already underestimated us. That's an advantage we shouldn't waste. If they want peace, showing strength won't change that. If they don't, he let the thought hang unfinished. President Hayes nodded slowly. Very well, Admiral. Proceed with the demonstration. As their shuttle undocked from the Celestial Dominance, Dr. Fuller moved to sit beside Admiral Holloway. Those weapon systems, she whispered. They're advanced, but did you notice anything odd? I did, Holloway replied quietly. No point defense systems, no redundancies. Their ship is powerful but untested. Dr. Fuller finished his thought. They've never had to fight a real battle. Admiral Holloway nodded slightly, his eyes still fixed on the alien vessel as it grew smaller behind them. Next week will be very educational for our new friends, he said. For all of us. A light morning fog hung over the waters of the Atlantic as the Veloxian shuttle descended toward Naval Station Norfolk. Inside, Ambassador Zortek and 5 other Veloxian officials sat in comfortable silence. They had spent the previous evening discussing what they might see today, and the general consensus was that it would be a simple affair. Primitive vessels that would further confirm their technological superiority over humans. Remember, Zortek had told his team, show appropriate respect regardless of what we see. These humans value their military accomplishments highly, even if they are limited by their technology. As the shuttle landed on the designated pad at the naval base, they were greeted by Admiral Holloway and Captain Alan Rodriguez, commander of the USS Gerald R. Ford. Welcome to Naval Station Norfolk, Captain Rodriguez said with a crisp salute. We're honored to have you as our guests today. The Veloxians nodded politely, their large eyes taking in the naval base. From their landing position, they could see some buildings and smaller vessels, but nothing particularly impressive yet. If you'll follow me, Captain Rodriguez continued. We've arranged transportation to the pier where the carrier group is docked. They boarded a small bus that drove them through the massive naval complex. As they rounded a final turn toward the main harbor, the fog began to lift, revealing the true scale of the American naval power. Zortek's eyes widened. The other Veloxians leaned forward in their seats. There, dominating the harbor, stood the USS Gerald R. Ford, over 1,000 feet of gray steel rising from the water like a metal island. Even at rest, the aircraft carrier projected an unmistakable aura of power. Surrounding it were the other ships of the strike group, guided missile cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels. That is your water vessel? Zortek asked, his usual composure slipping for a moment. That's the Ford, Admiral Holloway confirmed. The lead ship of our newest class of nuclear aircraft carriers. Nuclear? Questioned Kel Marie, the Veloxian scientist. You power it with atomic energy? Yes, Captain Rodriguez replied. The 2 nuclear reactors give it virtually unlimited range and power. It can operate continuously for 20 years without refueling. The bus stopped at the pier and the group disembarked. Standing at the foot of the massive ship, the Veloxians had to crane their necks to see the top of the tower structure. How large is this vessel? Asked Zortek. The Ford is 1,206 feet long, displaces about 100,000 tons fully loaded, Captain Rodriguez explained. She carries a crew of 4,500 and around 75 aircraft. The Veloxians exchanged glances. Their shuttlecraft could maybe carry 20 individuals. You mentioned aircraft? Kelmari inquired. Yes. Fighter jets, electronic warfare aircraft, early warning aircraft, helicopters, Captain Rodriguez explained. The carrier itself is essentially a mobile airbase. The tour began with the flight deck. As they walked the vast expanse of steel, several F-35 fighter jets were being prepared for demonstration flights. Naval personnel moved with practiced efficiency, checking systems, fueling aircraft, and securing equipment. Lieutenant Olivia Martinez joined them on the flight deck, explaining the electromagnetic aircraft launch system. Instead of steam catapults used on older carriers, we use electromagnetic energy to launch aircraft, she explained. It's more efficient and puts less stress on the airframes. Zortek ran his hand along one of the launch tracks, his expression thoughtful. This is more advanced than I expected, he said quietly. The tour continued below decks where the Veloxians were shown the Combat Information Center, the brain of the massive warship. Screens displayed radar information, ship positions, and various other data streams. Officers monitored communications and tactical information. From here, we can coordinate operations across the entire strike group, Lieutenant Martinez explained. We can track hundreds of air and surface contacts simultaneously. And these other ships, asked one of the Veloxian officials, pointing to a display showing the positions of the escort vessels. What is their purpose? Defense in depth, Admiral Holloway explained. The cruisers and destroyers provide anti-air, anti-surface, and anti-submarine protection for the carrier. They're equipped with various missile systems, guns, torpedoes, and electronic warfare capabilities. They were then taken to see one of the weapon systems on a guided missile destroyer that had docked alongside the carrier. The Mark 41 vertical launch system with its rows of missile cells impressed even the normally stoic Veloxians. Each cell can hold different types of missiles, explained the destroyer's weapons officer. Tomahawks for land attack, SM-6 for air, defense, ASROC for submarine defense. The system allows us to respond to various threats without reconfiguring the launchers. As the tour progressed, the Veloxians grew increasingly quiet, their earlier confidence replaced by thoughtful observation. When they were shown one of the submarines that had surfaced for the demonstration, Zortek finally asked the question that had been growing in his mind. Your species hasn't achieved interstellar travel, he said. How have you advanced your military technology to this degree? Captain Rodriguez and Admiral Holloway exchanged a brief glance before the captain replied. We've had a lot of practice fighting each other, he said simply. The demonstration culminated with carrier flight operations. The Veloxians watched from the bridge as fighters launched one after another from the deck, the electromagnetic catapults, hurling the aircraft from 0 to 170 miles per hour in just 2 seconds. The jets climbed steeply into the sky, performing precision maneuvers before returning to land on the narrow strip of deck with the help of arresting wires. The pilots trained for years to master these skills, Lieutenant Martinez explained. Landing on a carrier at night in rough seas is considered one of the most difficult tasks in aviation. As the last aircraft recovered, Admiral Holloway turned to Zortek. This is just one carrier strike group. The United States has 11 such groups, and there are more carriers operated by other nations. Zortek was silent for a long moment, watching as the flight deck crew reset for another launch cycle with practiced precision. You build these vessels for war, he finally said. It wasn't a question. We build them hoping never to use them in war, Admiral Holloway corrected. But yes, they're designed to fight and survive if necessary. As they departed the carrier, Zortek paused at the gangway, looking back at the enormous vessel. Our ships, he said quietly to Admiral Holloway, they're designed to impress. Yours are designed to endure. There was a new note of respect in his voice. I believe we have much to reconsider about our understanding of your species. Admiral Holloway simply nodded. The demonstration had achieved exactly what he'd hoped. A new understanding between their civilizations, one based on respect rather than condescension. The Veloxian embassy was unusually quiet that evening. Inside the sleek building that had been quickly constructed on the outskirts of Washington, D.C., Ambassador Zortek had called an emergency council meeting. The 6 Veloxians who had visited the naval base sat around a circular table, their expressions serious. We have made a critical error in our assessment of humans, Zortek began, his voice steady but concerned. Our initial scans detected their satellites, basic space stations, and rudimentary spacecraft. We assumed their other technologies would be equally primitive. Kelmari, the chief scientist, activated a holographic display in the center of the table. Images of the aircraft carrier and its escort ships floated in the air, rotating slowly. These vessels represent a level of military technology we did not expect, she said. While not as advanced as our ships in terms of propulsion or energy systems, they show surprising sophistication in other areas. Intelligence Officer Krelnar stood up and gestured at the display, which changed to show close-up images of various weapon systems they had observed. Humans have developed military technology at an unprecedented rate compared to other species we've encountered, he explained. Their civilian technology lags behind, but their weapon systems are alarmingly sophisticated. They've created a web of satellite surveillance, global communication networks, and precision weapons that could pose a significant challenge even to our ships if we were unprepared. How is this possible? Asked another council member. They still burn fossil fuels for much of their energy needs, They haven't cured all their diseases. They haven't even established permanent bases beyond their own moon. Zortek's large eyes blinked slowly as he considered the question. I believe Admiral Holloway gave us the answer. We've had a lot of practice fighting each other. Their history is filled with conflict. They've focused their brightest minds and greatest resources on the art of warfare. But the Valoxian Confederation united thousands of years ago, said Kelmarie. We stopped internal conflicts and directed our energies toward exploration and knowledge, as did most species we've encountered, Zortek agreed. But humans took a different path, and we failed to recognize that difference. He paused, looking at each council member in turn. We have underestimated them, and that is dangerous for them and for us. Meanwhile, at the Pentagon, a similar meeting was taking place. Admiral Holloway, Captain Rodriguez, Lieutenant Martinez, and Dr. Nicole Bennett from Naval Intelligence sat with several other military and scientific experts, analyzing what they had learned about the Valoxians. Their reaction to our carrier group was telling, Admiral Holloway said. They were genuinely surprised by the scale and capability of our forces. Dr. Bennett nodded, pulling up images of the Valoxian ship on a large screen. We've analyzed every scrap of data we could gather during their demonstration and today's visit. Their energy weapons are impressive, as is their propulsion system, but their tactical systems seem limited. Limited how? Asked Captain Rodriguez. Their ship has minimal point defense systems, Dr. Bennett explained. It's designed for long-range engagement, but would be vulnerable to swarm attacks or close-range combat. They also seem to have limited redundancy in critical systems. Lieutenant, Martinez leaned forward, like a sports car versus a tank. Their ship is faster and flashier, but ours are built to take hits and keep fighting. Exactly, Dr. Bennett agreed. And from what we could gather from their comments and questions, the Valoxians have never experienced large-scale warfare. They unified early in their development and have only encountered significantly less advanced species in their explorations. Admiral Holloway stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the night sky. They've never been tested in battle, he said quietly. They build their ships to explore and impress. We build ours expecting the worst. Do you think they're a threat, Admiral? Asked one of the Joint Chiefs who had been listening silently. Not intentionally, Holloway replied after a moment. But untested confidence can be dangerous. They came here expecting to find primitives they could guide and impress. Now they've discovered we're more complex than they thought. Back at the Valoxian embassy, the council had reached a decision. We must adjust our approach, Zortek announced. No more condescension. No more assumptions about their capabilities or intentions. Should we inform the High Command? Asked Krelnar. Request additional ships as a precaution? Zortek considered this for a moment before shaking his head. No. Sending more ships might be seen as a threat, and based on what we've seen, humans take threats very seriously. He gestured to the holographic display which now showed footage of the fighter jets launching from the carrier. These humans have spent centuries preparing for enemies. We must ensure they never see us as one. The next morning, President Hayes received a call from her chief of staff. The Valoxian ambassador has requested another meeting with world leaders. His tone was different, more respectful. Later that day at the United Nations, representatives from countries around the world gathered once again. Admiral Holloway stood near the back of the room, watching as Zortek approached the podium. The alien's posture seemed different somehow. Less grand, more measured. People of Earth, Zortek began, his voice carrying through the hall. When we arrived, we came with preconceptions about your civilization. We believed, based on our experiences with other young species, that we understood your development path and capabilities. He paused, his large eyes scanning the room. We were incorrect. After observing your naval forces yesterday, it has become clear that human development has followed a unique trajectory, one we failed to anticipate or understand. Your military technology in particular shows a level of sophistication that suggests we have much to learn from each other. Murmurs spread through the assembly as diplomats translated and whispered to each other. Admiral Holloway remained still, his expression neutral but watchful. The Voloxian Confederation wishes to revise our approach, Zortek continued. We propose a true exchange of knowledge and culture, not as teachers and students, but as equals with different experiences and strengths. After the speech, as the delegates broke for discussion, Admiral Holloway found himself face to face with Zortek in a quiet corner of the hall. Your words today were well received, Holloway said. They were sincere, Zortek replied. Your ships, they changed our understanding. How so? They showed us that we've been fortunate, the alien said. The Voloxians unified early. We never needed to build the kind of defenses your species has created. We never faced true threats. He looked directly at Holloway. But you have prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. There is wisdom in that approach that we had forgotten. Admiral Holloway nodded slowly. Sometimes the paths that seem primitive can teach unexpected lessons. Indeed, Zortek agreed. We have much to reconsider about our approach to Earth and to the galaxy at large. 3 days after the naval demonstration, world leaders gathered at the White House for the signing of the first formal treaty between Earth and the Voloxian Confederation. The Grand East Room had been prepared for the historic occasion with the flags of major nations alongside a newly created flag representing Earth as a whole. Ambassador Zortek entered with his delegation, their manner noticeably different from their first arrival. Gone was the subtle condescension, replaced by a careful respect. President Hayes greeted them warmly, gesturing toward the large table where the treaty documents waited. Today marks a new chapter in human history, President Hayes said to the assembled dignitaries and press. And I believe in Voloxian history as well. Zortek nodded. Indeed, every first contact changes both civilizations in ways neither can fully predict. The treaty itself was straightforward, a framework for peaceful exchange of knowledge, cultural understanding, and limited technology sharing, with clear boundaries respected by both sides. Unlike the original draft the Voloxians had proposed upon arrival, this version treated both parties as equals, with neither assuming a teaching role over the other. After the main signing ceremony, a smaller reception was held in the Blue Room. Admiral Holloway stood near a window, watching the interaction between humans and Voloxians with quiet satisfaction. Captain Rodriguez joined him, offering a glass of water. Mission accomplished, sir? Rodriguez asked. So far, Holloway replied. They respect us now. That's a good foundation for whatever comes next. Across the room, Zortek disengaged from a conversation with the British Prime Minister and made his way toward the 2 naval officers. He carried a small device in his hand, similar to a tablet but with a translucent screen. Admiral Holloway, Captain Rodriguez, he greeted them. I wanted to share something with you before we depart. He activated the device and a holographic image appeared above it. A sleek vessel with elements clearly inspired by Earth's naval designs. Our engineers have been working on new designs since our visit to your naval base, Zortek explained. More practical, more resilient. Admiral Holloway studied the image carefully. I see you've incorporated some of our defensive concepts. Yes, your approach to layered defense and redundant systems is something we had not considered necessary. We've been fortunate in our explorations to never encounter serious threats. Zortek's large eyes blinked slowly. But the galaxy is vast and largely unknown. Your philosophy of preparation has wisdom we had overlooked. And what does your high command think of these new designs? Holloway asked. They were resistant at first, Zortek admitted. But I shared the complete data from our observations. They now understand that different evolutionary paths can lead to valuable innovations, even in species that have not yet achieved interstellar travel. Captain Rodriguez smiled slightly. Give us time on that front. We're slow but determined. Of that, I have no doubt, Zortek said. In fact, one provision I specifically requested in the treaty was cooperation on space exploration. There are aspects of our propulsion technology that could be safely shared with humans. In return, we would value learning from your experience, in building systems designed to operate in hostile environments. A fair exchange. Holloway nodded. Later that evening, as the reception wound down, President Hayes found a quiet moment with Admiral Holloway in the Rose Garden. "You were right," she said. "Showing strength earned their respect." "Strength alone wouldn't have been enough," Holloway replied. "It was the nature of our strength that made the difference. They saw that our ships weren't built for parades or showing off. They were built to protect our people, to survive combat, to complete the mission no matter what. That's something they understood and valued once they saw it." The president nodded thoughtfully. "Their ambassador spoke with me privately about establishing a joint defense council, sharing information about potential threats in our region of space. He seemed genuinely concerned about our safety." "Interesting," Holloway mused. "Perhaps seeing our readiness made them realize how unprepared they might be for less friendly encounters. Do you think there are threats out there, beyond our knowledge?" President Hayes asked. "I think it would be surprising if there weren't," Holloway replied. "Space is vast. The Veloxians have only explored a tiny fraction of our galaxy, and they've been lucky so far." The next morning at Andrews Air Force Base, the Veloxians prepared to return to their ship in orbit. Before boarding their shuttle, Zortek had one final conversation with Admiral Holloway. "When we first arrived," the alien said, "we expected to find a primitive species struggling with basic technology. We thought we would impress you with our advanced ships and knowledge. And instead," Holloway prompted, "instead we found a resilient species that had taken a different path, one forged through conflict and hardship." Zortek paused, choosing his words carefully. "Your ships are designed not just to impress, but to survive combat. Our vessels are primarily ceremonial by comparison." Admiral Holloway considered this. "Different paths lead to different strengths. You achieved unity and peace earlier than we have. That's admirable." "Perhaps," Zortek agreed. "But there is something to be said for being tested, for facing challenges. It creates a certain readiness that cannot be achieved through theory alone." "That's the difference, Ambassador," Holloway said. "You built ships to explore. We built ours preparing for the worst while hoping for the best." The Veloxian extended his hand in the human gesture of farewell that he had recently learned. "We look forward to a long and mutually beneficial relationship with Earth." "As do we," Holloway replied, shaking the offered hand. As the shuttle lifted off, a young naval cadet named Ryan Carter, who had been part of the honor guard for the departure ceremony, approached Admiral Holloway. "Sir, if I may ask, were you ever worried about how they would react when they saw our military power?" Holloway watched the shuttle grow smaller against the blue sky. "The strongest position in any negotiation is being prepared to walk away from the table, or in our case, being prepared to defend the table itself." "Irodisar," Cadet nodded, still looking up at the sky where the shuttle had disappeared. Admiral Holloway placed a hand briefly on the young man's shoulder. "Remember this, Carter. True strength isn't about intimidation or showing off. It's about being ready for whatever comes, standing your ground when necessary and knowing when to extend a hand in friendship." Above Earth, as the Veloxian shuttle docked with their orbiting ship, Zortek sent one final message to their homeworld, a new classification for human civilization. "Approach with caution and respect. These humans are not to be underestimated."